everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from OurSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, November 5th, Decision Day 2024. What I'm referring to is the initial college football rankings come out tonight. The playoff committee is going to meet, and they are going to they're going to tell us what their rankings are, and we're going to find out where Notre Dame is for real, right? Like we've been lamenting the AP poll and the coaches poll and whatever poll, power rankings. Danny Cannell's listing his rankings on the Twitter machine. None of that matters now. The committee is going to start ranking teams, and then we can really see where Notre Dame stands. Jamie and I will talk about where we think Notre Dame will end up. We can talk about where Notre Dame is at large in college football, because I think that's an interesting discussion. We'll talk about some of last weekend's games. Notre Dame's coming off the bye. Some updates from Marcus Freeman, and we'll look ahead to Florida State a bit as well. That's what people are going on about in the chat. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going to go live. The links to the podcast are in the description below. And look, it's November. It's November, Jamie. Holiday season is right around the corner. It catches up on you every single year. You don't want to get behind on this stuff. And what you can do is you can go to ESQ Clothing. It's founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ and all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches with over a decade of making the best custom clothing available. ESQ will help you look and feel your best. I've got some stuff coming up for my wife's work. We got to go to things. I got to get my ESQ gear. You got to get your ESQ fit and all those good things. You can get a perfect fitting suit, sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for galas and holiday events. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Give yourself and your loved ones the gift of style. I'm going to go to the chat real quick. Jacob Paulus. Will FSU even score 10 non-garbage time points? Their offense is atrocious. Jamie, I'm just going to tell you right now, I've already decided. I'm going to pick 49-7. Notre Dame wins this game. I don't think people, like even me, I didn't understand how poorly Florida State is playing this year.
Horrible.
You and Mike mentioned it on Power Hour. It's worse than 2016 4-8 Notre Dame. They're like 2007 Notre Dame levels. Now they have a better roster than that 07 Notre Dame team, so they are severely like underachieving. But their numbers are abysmal. They don't have anything in the top. The most points they've scored this game is 21, and that was in the opener against Georgia Tech. DJU is not playing. It matters in the sense that the players who are Brock Glenn, who's filled in for him, he's playing worse than DJU was, but DJU was not playing very well at the time. Not a good football team, Jamie. So what do you think? 10 non-garbage time points. What do you think? What do you got?
The only way they do is if they get like one of those fluke type plays, like a Northern Illinois, where it's like this just literally they just backed into this fluke play. That's really like the only way I see it happening. Like, because I just don't see them being good enough to get anything done. Like, even if you look at they scored 11 points against North Carolina.
Yeah.
Last week, who gave up 70 earlier in the year. I think that the 70 was more of an anomaly. Like, North Carolina's defense isn't that bad. Like, they're average or whatever. But
yeah,
it's ugly. They're bad up front. They've had so many injuries up front. The quarterback play obviously hasn't been good. Those guys get pressured all the time. They can't run the ball at all. Basically, like, only if Notre Dame lays a total egg would they get over double-digit points.
The sausage king,
or a special teams, something like that. But the offense will not score 10 points.
The sausage king of Chicago, Abe Froman, says gambling is so hard, going to be wet and sloppy. Is it going to be wet? I just looked. Is it supposed to rain Is it supposed to be windy and stuff, Jamie? I didn't see
I
that.
didn't get the forecast yet, so
I didn't check it. I on the little app here. Now, sometimes the Apple Weather app, isn't very accurate. But I didn't see rain, so we'll have to check that out. Um, honestly, Abe Froman, the great that this is great. Like today is a special day. The ads are going away. Thank goodness. I am so tired of the political ads. Everyone's been complaining about them on our show. Those are gone. Get out of here. As Jamie says, get out of here. Get out. I'm tired of seeing it at like the games and everything. I don't like the political ads. It's annoying. So we can all celebrate that together. Steven Shulkowski says, "What time is the 12 o'clock podcast?" How do I answer that? I don't even know. What are you asking me, Steven? What are you asking me? Is the okay, you're being weird. All right, so let's go. Let's talk about I want to talk about the weekend's games, specifically Penn State and Ohio State. Penn State, look, I know we don't have to care about the AP poll anymore because it basically it never carried relevance, but it was interesting as a talking point throughout the year. Penn State at 6 is I think one of the worst, like it's a legitimate scandal in my opinion. It is one of the worst ranking decisions by the AP that I can recall. To me, I don't even really care where Notre Dame is. If you want to rank Notre Dame behind Indiana and BYU, Indiana and BYU haven't lost yet. BYU's got a nice win against Kansas State. Indiana's got a nice win against SMU, as I recall.
yeah,
Right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So Indiana beat SMU. That's a good team.
No, not Indiana. Not BYU beat SMU.
BYU has 2 wins. They have the Kansas State and the SMU.
Yeah, those are those wins.
I think they definitely deserve to be ahead of Notre Dame. Then that's fair. Indiana.
Those are better than Texas. Texas.
They're not better, but they haven't lost.
But they haven't lost. Okay.
Right. So like to me, it's fair. I wouldn't push back for it. They haven't lost the game. I think the Penn State thing, I thought they looked terrible. I thought their offense was baby. It was a baby offense. They have to do all these things to get 6 yards. You know, you're motioning out the quarterback. You're bringing the tight end in Wildcat. You're not explosive. Every time you try to throw the ball down the field, you're getting nothing. You're counting on Drew Aller to run to get you any yards. You can't throw the ball downfield. You don't have a power running game. You're scheming different types of run plays with your running backs, with your tight end, just to try to get yards. I was so unimpressed with them. I can't believe they're 6th. I thought that was a terrible football game by Penn State. It's completely fraudulent, in my opinion. Where do you come out, Jamie? Were you as appalled as I was watching them play against Ohio State? I didn't think that was a great game from Ohio State, to be honest with you. But where do you come out on that, Jamie?
Yeah, you also have to remember that Ohio State, they threw the pick 6 early, and then
yes, Ohio State was definitely playing better than them. I didn't think it was a great game, but please continue.
They threw the pick 6 early, and they fumbled the ball into the end zone when he was about to score.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't as close as that, and which is also too why you think about like Penn State. Yes, they had the ball with a chance to score and tie there towards the end. But it really should have never been that close, right? It really shouldn't have been that close. And I think, I think with Kotelnicki too, I think that it, because Isaac mentioned about him. I mean, obviously he's done a pretty good job this year. I think in that game, that was a game where you see a lot of inexperience as a play caller, because he hasn't been like a primary. Because Leopold was a primary guy in Kansas, right? And so to me too, that was like a little bit of like early Tommy Rees, where you saw that, where it's like, man, this guy could dial up some plays, but he's not sequencing things together in the way to set things up, right? And I think that's, a lot of inexperienced guys lack rhythm as play callers, like where they're not really like, it takes a while to kind of learn like, hey, this is what this in this situation and stuff. And I think that's something there. I don't think he's like a bad coordinator or anything like that. I just think also too, you're going against a really, really good Ohio State defense. I don't think Penn State's very good. Like I just think they're a top 15 team, sure. I think, I think that's fair, but I don't think they should. They haven't beaten anybody. Their best win is what? Like they don't,
Is Illinois 21-7?
Yeah, and I don't know. Like Illinois is fine. They're a decent team, but
They
that's
beat
not
Purdue
like
50-49.
yes. So
I mean, what's the evidence that they're that much better than like Louisville is?
they're not better than Louisville. I can tell you. I've watched both of the teams this year. Louisville is much better than Illinois. I would not pick.
No, I'm talking about Penn State.
Oh, that Penn State's better than Louisville. Probably not a lot, but I mean, I think you could say like, well, Louisville's also lost some games against good teams too, right? So
right, but it's
like probably around that. They're in that same kind of
like
level,
I think if Penn State played Miami, I could see Miami very much beating them. I could see SMU beating Penn State. Why couldn't they do that? Like that's my point. Is like who have they actually beaten? Where it's like we know they're good because they beat X team. Like Illinois is not good.
Yeah,
Illinois is not that good of a team.
No, they're not.
So I just like you beat UCLA 28-13. No. Who did they beat 28-13? And then they beat Wisconsin 28-13. And then Iowa just completely destroys them. Like I can't get behind that team. I just them going to 6 is just I think one of the worst things they've ever done as the AP. I'm very interested to see where Notre Dame ends up. Yeah. Where do you think Notre Dame ends up with the committee this week?
Probably around 9 or 10 would be my guess.
Yeah.
I think that's just where they'll kind of start. And I do think probably like I don't know if Penn State will get the benefit of the doubt, but I do imagine that maybe some of these other teams that you don't think are as kind of like I could see Alabama being ranked ahead of Notre Dame, even though I don't know if they deserve it. I'm just saying that's like the kind of thing that I could see like early on, where you're like, oh, because they could just say like, well, Alabama beat Georgia, and they beat Mizzou, which Mizzou's not a good team, but you know what I mean? Like I could see that. I probably won't, but I mean, I just think there'll be like one of those weird kind of ones that'll happen. But I mean, if you told me that Notre Dame was like, it wouldn't be shocking to see Notre Dame at 6. Like it wouldn't, but I just think that like they're probably going to look at right now. They'll probably get banged on for the NIU loss, like just right now in the early things, but it's just like, it's just getting further and further away from it. And the thing is that like these next few weeks are just going to have so many games where essentially going to be elimination games. So teams will just get, up and down, move up and down based on it. So like LSU's playing Alabama this week, right? Well, that's not whoever loses.
That's a third loss for somebody. Yeah.
Whoever loses that game is out. Because I don't think how it is right now. I will be shocked if there's like a 3-loss team that gets in as of right now, right? Like maybe it'll change, but I just don't think anyone, if you look at it based on the strength of who they've beaten, I don't see a team that's really set up that way. And Ole Miss plays Georgia. That's one of those things where, man, I could easily see Ole Miss winning that game, and then Ole Miss will shoot up after that. And obviously Georgia will move down, but that's also a game. If like Ole Miss loses that game, if you kind of look at their schedule, that means they lost to anyone who was good basically on their schedule. So they're done. Right. Like, so it's just, so I think it's like one of those things where some of these teams, you're going to look at it they're either going to get a bump and maybe that kind of slides them up or a little bit, or they're just going down and it's over. But what I saw from last week was Big 12 only going to get one, 100% now. I just
You
can't
think
see it.
so?
There's no way that a second Big 12 team's going to get in now that you looked at like K-State kind of losing that they've already got the second loss. That's not going to get in over a second loss team from any of these other conferences or a one loss Notre Dame. No, never. So even if it worked out where they got in, they were finished the season at 10-2 because I don't think they can get. They have to back their way into the Big 12 championship game, right? And if they go in the Big 12 championship, they lose again, they're not getting it, right? So, so right now it's BYU versus believe Iowa State is kind of like how it's set up for what it would be in that thing. And it's just like, I don't think if Iowa State beats BYU's getting it, right? And like Colorado, I know like technically they have a chance to get in, but it's like Colorado's not going to get. I mean, not only will they probably lose another game here in the next little bit, but it's like you look at they got destroyed by like playing out of conference. They just got destroyed by Nebraska, who
and
does
Nebraska
not.
is like a mid Big 10 team.
Yeah, so it's like
and they got physically beaten up too. Like that's the thing.
So none of those Big 12 teams, like the only good win for any of those Big 12 teams is against SMU, right? The BYU over SMU out of conference win. And SMU they're a fine football team, top 20-ish or whatever, but like they're very on the brink of losing a lot of games here too. So they could easily lose if they went out and that's the other thing. ACC is only getting one. The ACC is only getting one. Now that Clemson lost, it's over for Clemson. Like there's no coming back for them. I just don't think that they'll be able to do it. Now they're there, they still might lose another game too. But SMU and Miami, who both have pretty easy schedules, are probably going to win out and go in. And I just maybe one loss Miami also gets in too if they lose that game. But even if you look at Miami and who they've beat, their best win is Louisville. That's their best win, right? So I bet they wish they had that Notre Dame game on their schedule now, right? So it's like they still might get it, but they're hanging on by a thread of kind of in that upper echelon, whatever. Because there's no way even if they were undefeated, I think that they would finish as a top ranked team unless they won the ACC, right?
Yeah, I think Miami's going to get the name bump with the conference bump, even if they were to lose. They're just gonna. I mean, if they win the conference, they get it automatically. But it's just, I don't know. I just feel like I want Miami to win out because that to me that eliminates the ACC. If they were to lose, to whoever it might be in the ACC title game, I think they would be in, unless they had multiple losses. I think the committee would give them the Miami name credit. That's just how I see it. I'm open to be wrong about that. I mean, it's just I think the overall thing when I think about college football and how this all shakes out is Notre Dame's got to, in my opinion, Notre Dame's just got to take care of their business. And there was some discussion amongst me and a couple friends about is it better? Is it almost better for Notre Dame to beat Navy 38-24, where it's it's a good win, but Navy looked good, which kind of validates how people thought about Navy. And my thing was always blowouts are always better. You always want to be crushing teams. And the reason for that is then Navy goes and loses to Rice, which is it's just a terrible loss for them. That is atrocious that Rice just fired their coach. You have a team that is barely they're firing their coach. They're not having a good season. And I don't know what's going on. Maybe something's going on with Blake Horvath and his thumb still, or whatever it might be. 24-10, Jamie. That's awful. That is a very
I think there was a
unacceptable
couple
performance.
things that kind of led to it. Yeah,
What
it is
was
an
it like?
awful
There were
loss.
delays and whatnot.
There's
Like,
huge delay in
yeah,
that game. First of all, when you're the road team and there's those long delays, and it happens like right before you're playing a game, it throws you off big time. And also you're not in like a comfortable setting.
right. Like
I doubt
like the
I doubt Rice
away
has a
locker
good
room
away locker
situation.
room. You're absolutely thrown off.
Yeah.
You don't have the same luxuries that the home team has.
And Navy doesn't have the type of operation that another
Yeah.
type of school would have as well.
They're 100% like they're getting like, oh guys, go go to Subway and grab these guys, bunch of 6-inch ham and cheese subs right now to eat. Like it's like one of those kind of weird things that you have to do that. And then the weather was obviously a factor in it, and the weather's not a good thing. Bad weather's not a good thing, especially after you had all those fumbles and all that stuff.
And like, look, they got up for Notre Dame, right? Like, how many times have you
Yeah.
seen it? A team gets up for Notre Dame, and then the next
All of a
one
sudden
gets
they're definitely not as confident going into that game after getting waxed by Notre Dame. So I think it was I'm not saying it is a bad loss, but I mean, when I was thinking about it, I was like, man, I should bet on Rice with all this, just like take a money line or something, just because it felt like, man, just seems like just a bad spot there to be in. That situation is just like, it can be rough.
Kyle Gibson says, thoughts on the narrative that the committee won't penalize teams for conference championship game losses. Seems ridiculous to me to think it wouldn't be a factor in playoff seeds ranks. It 100% better be, because that is the whole point of why Notre Dame can't get a bye. It's because they don't play the conference championship game. If the conference championship game doesn't matter, then Notre Dame should absolutely be able to get a bye then. Like, you can't do that. You can't say you can't get a bye because you're not playing the conference title game and these other teams do, and so they have to pay the penalty. If you're not paying a penalty, then you need to change it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do that. It's not fair. Like, in my opinion, you can't go in that direction. That's how I view it. What do you think?
I view it the same, and I think that but I think it matters. Like if you lose in double overtime in the conference championship game, you shouldn't get knocked down for that. Like that's not something that I think is or I mean knocked down slightly, you know what I mean? Like that it shouldn't be like something where, oh man, you get that loss and they were going to be the 6th seed, now they're out. Like no, I don't believe in that. Because that I don't think is fair for that from that perspective, because it's like one bounce here or there. But I think back to that Ohio State Wisconsin game where Ohio State kind of like, obviously that was when the polls mattered more, right? And it was like, but Ohio State had to like just beat down Wisconsin to in the Big Ten championship game, and they won like I think it was 50-0 or something like that. It was some kind of just drubbing. And if you do that and that happens to you in that game, I mean that's the reason why Florida State didn't get in. I know they won their game, but they looked horrible in that game against Louisville. Like it was bad. And if they had looked in that game and they were like, hey, they look competent on offense and they won this game by like, 3 touchdowns, and they're just like, pretty dominant in the game, and they were like things were picking up and there was things that I 100% I think they would have got in. But like it is like they can't ignore those games. They have to look at it as it's another data point. That's the data point, right? Like that extra data point. So it matters, right? Like it matters. Like you're putting it on film there, right? So I think it does matter, and it should matter. Now, if it's a close loss where something happens like right at the end, yeah, you shouldn't get punished harshly for it. But if you go out and you prove that you're not up to the level of this other team, I mean, it matters.
Yeah, it does. But Notre Dame does have to take care of their business, right? And that's important. I think Florida State and Virginia are what they are, right? You got to beat those teams regardless. Army presents challenges. No one knows what's going on with their quarterback. If he's not playing, then there's nothing to talk about, in my opinion. With Army, they did not look good with the backup, but Army's not going to have like a stable of quarterbacks that can come in and just be playing the way that their starters playing. People in the chat are making. They wanted us to talk about Jaden Maiava, who's named quarterback, starting quarterback for USC. Miller Moss is benched. They bring in the transfer from UNLV for the final 3 games. I mean, to me, I don't know. I mean, look, Miller Moss has not looked like a difference maker in the last few games. He's thrown some key interceptions that have cost them points. They've only scored more than 30 points on a couple of occasions this year. So on that front, I get it. On the other front, you threw him 51 times in Washington against one of the best defensive secondaries in the country. What are you doing? Lincoln Riley, what are you doing there? It's cold and it's wet, and you're throwing the ball 51 times. Yeah, he threw a couple picks, of course. But they're going to go with the transfer. How much do you think this matters for them? Right? Their metrics are fine as far as an offense. They run the ball well. They throw the ball pretty well. They're not explosive like they have been, and that's been a big problem for them this year. But I guess this is a signal they want to run the ball more. I think they could have just been running it before, right? That was a choice that they were making not to do that, not their inability to do it. What does this mean for you? Does this mean anything for you? I guess it's kind of a wait and see, but just your initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, you have to see how because he didn't win the job, right? So that is something. So
and he was upfront about it, talking about he didn't know the playbook well enough, right? He kind of understood, I'm not there. So maybe that's changed. We'll have to see.
And it does happen, right? Like you think about where Ian Book was in the North Carolina game in 2017 compared to where he was at the bowl game. It was completely different, right? So, he could be more ready now, and that's something to think about. He has the reason why he was committed to Georgia. For people that don't know, when the transfer portal, he started at UNB last year as a redshirt freshman. Big kid, 6'4", good athlete. Had a solid redshirt freshman, solid, not spectacular, solid. Didn't have, if you look at it, he was 70th in QBR, right? Can run, dual threat, but he didn't put up. If you look at say UNLV's quarterback running numbers this year compared to last year, and it's the same offense, right? Like Brendan Marion's still the offense corner, same offense. They're just completely different, way better at running the ball there. So I think he will offer more as a runner than Miller Moss, but maybe people shouldn't get too worried about him being the super dangerous dual threat, because I don't think he's quite he's not Riley Leonard, so I wouldn't say he's that type of player as a runner, but he will scramble. Miller Moss, PFF had him one scramble all year, one scramble. That's incredible, right? And Maeva is a scrambler, right? He'll scramble quite a bit. He was third in all quarterbacks in turnover worthy play percentage last year. So something to keep in mind. He threw 10 picks, stares down a lot of guys, which is very young quarterback thing, right? So it's natural. But he has he has a big arm. They will, I'm sure they'll throw the ball vertically a lot with him. But you're just going to have to wait and see, because it's one thing to be like, yeah, this guy could be super spectacular, great. Like Georgia wanted him, USC wanted him. Like look around, like obviously this guy's got talent. He's got big time talent. But let's see how he does in the first few weeks. And frankly, it is way better for Notre Dame that they're going to get film on him before. So they'll get a good idea of where he's at, what they can do to kind of do it. And like, I mean, I like that way more for Al Golden and company to get that beforehand. And we'll just see. I think, the added part of the running makes them a little bit hard to prepare for. I always think that that's the case, but I mean, those turnovers, that could be a big deal.
The turnovers, and then look, you're facing Al Golden's defense, man. Like that's tough. Like it just is. Like especially when you said like the fact that they get tape on him, what they want to do, they got to have some sort of like I don't know that they're going to have to keep to some extent just a package, right? Like they're going to have to just it can't have the full playbook. You don't have enough time to build on that. You don't have enough time to build and practice on the entire playbook and what the playbook is. They're going to have to scale that back. They're going to add some things, but Notre Dame's going to see those things. And just for him to go against Notre Dame's defense, that makes it very difficult for them. But like you said, it screams big arm running ability. It screams like we're going to when we're running the ball and when we try to throw the ball, we're going to try to hit the ball downfield, right? Like that is just kind of how these things work with the style of quarterback that he is. So we'll monitor how he does in the next couple games, and then we'll make our kind of prognostications from there. On to Notre Dame a little bit. Marcus Freeman updated a little bit. Mitch Jeter is he's questionable still with the groin. I'm kind of going back to the game against who when did he get hurt? Was it Georgia Tech, the opening kickoff that he got hurt? What game was it that he got hurt?
It was the no, it was before Georgia Tech.
It was Stanford.
It was Stanford. Yeah.
I think now it's been 4 weeks. I think it's fair to say he either A got hurt on that kickoff or B that he really shouldn't have been out there. He's missed 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That this is not a thing that can happen. You can't send him out there. It's like, oh yeah, I had a sore groin. We kicked off and we decided to be cautious. 4 weeks later, he's still questionable. Something went wrong there. Shouldn't have been put out on the field, in my opinion, unless he hurt it just on that play. But that's the situation. He talked about there's going to be no changes to the offensive line. So Notre Dame's offensive line is going to be what it is. Probably for the remainder of the year. I think this is the group that they like with Spindler on the right and Strouth on the left. So that's what we should expect. S Rock says, has Denbrock's scheme changed during the season? It seems as if he's putting Leonard in better situations. Thoughts? I don't know that his scheme has changed. I think they've just added things throughout the year to kind of build on the things that they've already been doing, right? We saw that with the RPO game where they've basically been running those actions all year. And then now it's like they're willing to pull it and get ready to go and get the ball out. And I think that is something that they were building towards throughout the year. They're adding more downfield throws. They're adding more intermediate range throws between 10 and 19 yards in the air, utilizing Jordan Faison. Maybe needed Jordan Faison to get healthy to do those things. Anything else that you've seen, Jamie, that what has led to Notre Dame's uptick in offensive efficiency, especially in the passing game?
Yeah, I think, one of the things is I wouldn't even say that, yeah, like it's like crazy changes within the scheme. Cause I think after NIU, he kind of went back to like, man, we're going back to basics and kind of like building up the confidence of the offense in general. And I think that has been a big thing, right? Where he was like, hey, I got to do things. I got to make easier throws for Riley Leonard, like early on in the game. And I know that's like one of those things that they always talk about, like get your quarterback going, get him confidence. But that was definitely something that he was like really focused on, especially like in those games, directly after NIU. Like that was something that was important. But I think there's been a lot of stuff that has just been like game plan specific of what he's done scheme wise. He's certainly been very aware of like who he has and doesn't have on the offensive line and how he's called that. But I would agree with you, Greg. Like I think a lot of it is, them attacking intermediate more and doing a lot of things like that. But some of that has to do with, maybe getting like a phase on back, like you said, but also just him having the confidence that like, hey, he's going to make those throws now. And sometimes those throws were available, but he didn't throw them, before, right? So I think so much of it is the steps that Riley Leonard has taken forward, and this, Denbrock has obviously helped that quite a bit.
Denbrock told us this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And look, I was open to that, right? But then you react to what you see, and it's just like, this just doesn't look good. But he did say Jaden Daniels went through the same thing. And if you look at his numbers at LSU in his first season, it didn't look good in the beginning of the year. And then things started to get better and better for Jaden Daniels. And that's what we're seeing from Riley Leonard, right? My big question is, and I should have put up the chart. I should have had the chart available. There was a chart, I think it was from Stats of War from Parker Flammang, that showed the number of times that receivers basically the quarterback was throwing to wide open receivers. Basically, were they getting schemed open, right? Notre Dame's near the bottom of the chart. And funny enough, USC was also near the bottom. So that's interesting, something to track. Now, I'm sure I like that this is to date, right? So look, maybe they started much lower and it's getting pulled up a little bit. I just like, it's hard for me to truly take this offense seriously until they can get more receivers open in space. It's just kind of a staple in college football where it's like, you got to be able to get, because look, it's hard for quarterbacks to throw into tight coverages consistently. And I think that's something they don't want Riley Leonard to do. And it's just like, you got to be able to get these guys open in space to kind of take advantage of, all the defenders looking in for the run play, right? This is the big question for me is, can Notre Dame get to that spot? I don't know if they can, right? I think Faison, it gives you a lot of hope for that because he's that type of guy. We've talked about it a bunch. Mitchell Evans in that way. Can they get Bo Collins a little bit more? Jaden Greathouse, he's come on in the last few games. That's my big question is, can they get these guys in space and involved and become a very dangerous passing game? I think they've been effective as passing team. They have yet to be dangerous. And I think that's kind of where it is. Kind of guess your thoughts on that take.
I would say too that teams feel comfortable to play more man against Notre Dame because they think they can match up with receivers. And so obviously some of that stuff with man is you got to scheme up some plays and you have to, call some rub routes and do some different things to get guys open. But you also have to have guys who can just win, right? And who can win and are good route runners, can win contested, do these kind of things. And that's also too where I think like having a Jordan Faison is like, he's a guy who can beat man coverage. Like he's actually kind of like the perfect guy to beat man coverage because he's short area, quick, fast enough to separate, strong enough to win contested. Like he's kind of that an ideal guy for that. And obviously he did great job against it last year. Obviously it was just the end of the year. And they just haven't had that guy that you could think like, man, this guy can win like that. And I would say Greathouse is pretty good against man too, because he is a good route runner, but he doesn't have that same dynamic, athleticism that I think that Faison has.
Yeah. So that's something to track there as well. I like where Notre Dame offensive line is, I don't want to say it's their best group because I think you'd really like Ashton Craig. I think you'd really like Ashton Craig at center, but I do like Strauss and Spindler in there. I don't know. I just liked it better. And do you feel the same way? I mean, I just felt like the combination of Strouth and Spindler, I felt better about than like Strouth and Pendleton. And it's nothing against Pendleton. I don't. It's just like, to me, Pendleton was just kind of out there, and I've seen Spindler do more things. Let me ask you this: do you think Spindler's playing better this year than he did last year?
I mean, I don't think they've played anybody that is really like. I think it's just been the same thing with him as the same thing with Pat Coogan. Is like
Mm,
when they play against guys that are like the higher level, that's when they have a tough time, and they just haven't played those guys really since they do. Which is also too. This is kind of like a weird if you're looking for like a matchup this week where you're like, man, Notre Dame's having problems. Like they got Florida State has legit defensive tackles. They're good if they want to. They could be dominant at times. So that is something to watch. And it's also why you want to have like a guy like Billy Stroud, because you hope like, hey, this is a guy who can handle that. But it is going to be something to watch because if you think about like what Zeke Biggers did in that
yeah,
Georgia Tech game,
yeah,
where he gave Spindler and Coogan and Pendleton like all kinds of trouble, right? So they're gonna have to do that with Farmer this week, and Jackson's the other guy. Like they're gonna have to deal with that. So I kind of want to see that before I say it. I think they've been fine. Like they've been
okay,
totally good. But I would say the big difference between them and a Pendleton and why it made sense to kind of put Shroud back in there rather than at right guard was because I think Pendleton the good. I mean, when he's like moving people, he moves people at the point of attack better than I think he's probably moved people at the point of attack better than Shroud has even. When you really see like a guy moving and Mike had mentioned it on power, like they were run to the left side. And the reason they ran to the left side is because it's like when they run his side, he will move a guy. Like
hmm,
he can move like a big man at the point of attack. The problem is just like the level of consistency there, the level of consistency in pass pro where he's just not there yet. And I think like that's kind of like the big difference there where you just see like an assignment wise too, it's just like it's just more consistent
yeah,
from Rocco.
yeah. You want it to be more consistent. But Strouth has the upside, and like that's always what you're chasing. You're chasing that upside, and if you need a more upside with your media company, and you're not getting as much as you think out of the one you have now, or you want to go with one, and you think I need really like I need to really dominate this space. And go with VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online and give them a call at 574-800-9106. Um, Chief Brody, he's not getting as much out of his media company, and he needs to upgrade. VSR
There you
Media,
go. This is
mention
why
ISP.
that's why there's the ad reads.
That's why we do the ad reads
Get it
right there.
done, Chief Brody.
You got to get more out of it. Um, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, okay. And I think if Notre Dame takes care of business, they'll be they'll be a playoff team. I
They're
think
going to be
everyone
in it.
feels
I
that
would.
way.
I would.
Yeah.
No, they're in it if they win
Who
out. Yeah.
is there a team in college football this year where you think of like 2020 Bama was like it'd really be good if for some reason Notre Dame did not run into that team, right? Um, Georgia from a couple years ago was kind of the same way. Like that team's kind of a monster, right? Is there any team in college football you think that fits that description this year?
No, I don't think there's anyone even close to it, really.
Yeah.
Um, I just don't think like I would say like right now Oregon, I mean, they're undefeated. They're ranked number 1. So yeah, like, I'm not going out on a limb saying they're like the best team I've seen, but like you could see how they're the best team, but like how close that Ohio State game was, and Ohio State um just isn't as good as they should be at the very least. Like I think you'd say, hey, I don't know if you'd want to see Ohio State would probably be at the top of the list just because of like the talent they have at like the skill positions and all that. But I don't know. Like I don't think like there's no team, especially like it should be a team. Like there should be a team out there that you look at like Notre Dame, which is obviously a flawed team, that you say, man, like I don't think Notre Dame would have a shot against these guys. Kind of think they'd have a shot against just about anybody, really. Like, you know, because like let's say they play Georgia, and where normally you just say, man, I just too many dudes, Georgia, this and that, and like I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think Notre Dame's scoring a lot of points against Georgia.
No,
Like,
no, 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 no,
I
no.
don't see that. At the same time, if Carson Beck's going to give them the football a bunch, and I think that's something that could happen against Notre Dame's defense, and they don't run the ball as well. They're not as good up front on the offensive line as they should be. So I don't really like. I mean, you definitely pick Georgia in that game, but there is a path for Notre Dame to win that game. Where if this was like Georgia of a couple years ago, I'd say, man, no way. There'd be Notre Dame by like 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Georgia, I think Oregon is the scariest team, I think, for Notre Dame's defense to face, just because they can do so many things. They can put you in so many bad positions where it's
Yeah.
like you really, really wish Boubacar was there, or like you really want Ben Morrison in this game, like
Yeah.
something like that, like offensively. I think they have a good defense too. I think Oregon is the toughest matchup for Notre Dame, because I feel most confident that they could score 4+ touchdowns against Notre Dame. And this is where you start to get in these upper tier teams like Oregon and Georgia and even Ohio State. Like I think Notre Dame would struggle to score against Ohio State. But that's kind of the 3, right? I think they could move the ball on Bama. No question in my mind, they could. I think they could move the ball on Penn State. I think Penn State is close to like Texas A&M in terms of their type of defense. Texas A&M's got a good defense, regardless of what happened against South Carolina. That's just kind of a weird game, the way that game went. But I just there isn't that, like, if Notre Dame were to get in the playoffs, there just isn't that team that I think, oh, that scares me. Like Texas, even Texas, like they haven't. Notre Dame has like metrically, Notre Dame's been better than them this year. Texas does not have a good win. They don't. They have Michigan, who stinks. Michigan is awful. After that, who is Texas beaten? Right?
Yeah.
It just hasn't been very impressive. Like they haven't looked that killed the they've killed the bad teams. They did not look good against Georgia at all. So I just, which isn't to say like I would pick Notre Dame to beat all these teams, but I think there is a chance, and we keep talking about this, like there is a chance for Notre Dame to improve enough as a team to where that gap gets closer or gets closer, excuse me. And I was curious about, people were talking to Marcus Freeman about Riley Leonard's, scrambling in the press conference yesterday, and how he, is getting more comfortable. And Marcus Freeman talked about his ability to scramble. And I thought that, because I noted, he scrambled so much more against Navy, and maybe it was a singular game, right? Maybe it was just like opponent specific, but also it's possible that he's getting more comfortable in the passing game to the point where he's comfortable saying, no, what we want is not here. I can now leave, where it's like, if you're unsure when to even leave the pocket.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that comes with like being more comfortable in the passing game at large means I'm more comfortable to make a decision that this isn't there and I know it isn't there. I'm going to get out of here with confidence and know where to go.
Yeah, I think that has been huge, and that really stood out in you know, the most recent game. Like that was something where you could just see it. Like that's why all those plays where he scrambled against Navy were like big plays, because
Right.
it's like it's not there. I don't need to wait for the other thing. Like, and he was gone,
Right.
and he was out the gate, right? And that's why he had like 80 yards rushing on scrambles. Um, I think, kind of back to the original topic of like whether these teams scare you or not. Um, like I said, I would most of these teams out of the teams that we mentioned would be favored against Notre Dame.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
I'm not acting like, oh, Notre Dame would beat this team or whatever. Like, but the problem is that like, or the issue with other years was there were teams that were just so good, like they were juggernauts on both sides of the ball, that it just was like Notre Dame just didn't have. So sorry, Cheap Brody mentioned about how Notre Dame will struggle to match points with elite offense, right? And that's definitely true, except for like say Miami, which has a great offense, obviously. Like Cam Ward has been spectacular. He's probably going to win the Heisman, but their defense is atrocious. Their defense is like not good. Notre Dame will score on their defense. Their defense is not good enough. So and then also too, like they will put up points, but they're not going to put up 50 against Notre Dame like
Right.
they would in some of these other games. So, and Notre Dame might turn them over. So there's those kind of things that, make a difference. They're basically Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley is what Miami is this year, right? Like with their average to below average defense, it's essentially, and, a great offense, right? And I just don't think with some of these other teams too, like Alabama has a ton of talent on defense. They just don't play that great at defense. Like so where before you just say, man, I don't know how Notre Dame would ever score on Alabama when they had better offense, but it's just not that way this year with a lot of those top teams in terms of like they're like I think that's why Ohio State would be the worst matchup, because I think like I don't like if they can be smart about it and like not turn the ball over, and if basically if their receivers are just getting in enough matchup, those guys are going to win enough. And I just think Notre Dame would have a really tough time scoring against their defense. And that's a game too where you're like, you miss Ben Morrison, and you're just like, I think that's the kind of thing. But I don't know. I just don't think I think Oregon and Oregon, Ohio State would be the only two teams that you're like, man, you'd have to have like so many breaks go your way to kind of really set it up. And everybody else that that I've seen this year, like you maybe say that about Georgia if they didn't give the ball away as much as they do.
Yeah. And I think the D line would have to have a good game against Georgia.
Yes.
But the
D line has
linebackers
to have a great game no matter what. Whoever
the D line has to have a good game against Georgia. The linebackers would have to be really, really good against Georgia. I think against like Oregon and Ohio State, like the D line would have to be like dominant. And that's asking a lot, when you have as many guys out as they do. But look, none of this is written, right? Like anything could change, and Notre Dame could continue to ascend. We're talking today, November 5th, right? Like things can evolve and things can change. People can get hurt for other teams and whatever. Notre Dame's just got to keep winning their games and keep growing as a team. See where it takes them. Mitchell Heilich says, appreciate you keeping me company as I move into a new house. It's 47 degrees and raining. We're hitting and hustling. Mitchell's moving to a new home. Congratulations to you for that. It's very exciting. It's very exciting to move into a new home. Moving is the worst thing in the world. So I hope we were able to keep you company. But we are going to end it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So wherever it is, we're going to go live. We're going to be back on Thursday talking more Notre Dame football and more Florida State. We've got a new Dimes with Dara podcast that just came out. Dara is in Europe. She potted from Europe. But we had to talk about the Notre Dame women's opener. So check that out as well. It's on the YouTube feed. It's a good listen, in my opinion. So, all right, everyone, have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.